Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone. We're on we're on the 24th word.
Abdurrahman, I don't know if you can answer this, but can you explain to me again in like one sentence each, what is flower, what was it again? Flower droplet atom, just for context.
Yes, I could do that by asking Brother Yusuf to do it.
I'll just go my notes very quickly. So author said that there are three major types, and within three major classes, if you like, he counted three different layers. So for the flower, he said either it is the people of intellect at the first layer. At the second layer, he said it is those people who try to achieve like truth through bodily systems and material tools. And at the third layer, he said it is those who do not give up egotism, plunge in works of art, and trying to reach truth exclusively through proof and induction, he said. For the second type, droplet, said it is at the first layer, it points to sainthood. At the second layer, he said it is through using mind and refining soul. And at the third layer, he said, it is those who try to reach truth through knowledge, wisdom, reason, intellect, and learning. And for the atom, he said, it is prophethood at the first layer, or the path of prophethood. At the second layer, he said it is achieving truth through belief, submission, and purifying the heart. And at the third layer, he said it is through belief and Quran, through poverty and worship, going to truth rapidly. So he added rapidly at the third layer. These were the three categories that he mentioned. And then he said within each of those categories and layers, there are two ways. One is directly looking at the sun. The other one is using a mirror to reach to the sun. The first being representing the path of prophethood again, and the second way being the path of sainthood. So if this helps at all.
I guess, although I think I'm with Abdurrahman that I don't quite fully get it, but not doesn't mean we can't continue. I mean, from my simple mind, I guess maybe he's making a distinction between materialists, saints, and prophets. If that's, I guess that's my basic takeaway, but I could be wrong here.
May I try to give my summary as well from my notes?
Yes.
So this would
can you give the summary in for us as simple as possible? That's because when I read it, I think the more I read it, the more I'm confused about what he's saying.
Okay, I will try. With the flower overall, what I understand is people who are looking at the universe themselves and seeing all these different things, all these different colors, all these different actions, all these things taking place. And from them, making some conclusions. For instance, you look at your fears, your fear of death, for instance, and come up with a simple understanding of, let's say, afterlife through your fear of death. It's mostly about, what's taking place, what's happening around you, what's happening inside you, how you see universe, how you see yourself. And this is what I understand from flower in a nutshell, let's say. There are different things as well, but to me, this is the main, like a punchline of flower. With the droplet, I guess you take you take reasoning or abstracting maybe more into equation, and you look at around you. You still start from your experiences, what's happening inside you or what's happening around you. But then you say, there must be something beyond all this. There must be something that, all these things refers to. And instead of talking about, what's happening around you, instead of talking about the art, you start talking or you start understanding the artist, maybe, or action of, making art. So you're going beyond what you see. You try to make some, the abstractions, and try to learn from your experiences. You do not, restrict yourself within the realm of your experiences, immediate experiences, let's say. Okay? Because everything you can call as experience, but let's say immediate experiences. This is what I understand from droplet, like starting from surroundings inside you and reaching to something else beyond them. And that's the reason I think he's giving this example of moon, which reflects light of sun. And then with the atom, what I understand is you give up everything you have, you realize your weakness, you realize your impotence, and you take compassion as the center of the universe as you experience. So impotence, poverty, compassion, these are the things that, at the center of the atom. Whatever comes, it comes from your creator, it comes from your merciful creator, most compassionate creator. This is the head of atom as I understand. I hope it was simple enough for your complicated mind, Suhail.
No. I mean, we can keep reading. I'll have to. I feel like this thing needs a table, but in any case, Abdurrahman can keep reading.
Okay, inshallah. Then I hope you guys found the location.
Thus, on the first way, flower, droplet, and atom can each say, I am a mirror to the sun of all the world. But on the second way, they cannot say that.
Oh, sorry. Should we read first way and second way as well?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Otherwise, this first way, second way would make sense.
Oh, you're right. The first way is direct and without barrier or veil. This way represents the way of prophethood. The second way, and this barriers intervene. The capacities of the mirrors and places of manifestation add color to the sun's manifestations. This way represents the way of sainthood. Thus, on the first way, flower, droplet, and atom can each say, I am a mirror to the sun of all the world. But on the second way, they cannot say that. They can either say, I am the mirror to my own sun, or the mirror to the sun which is manifested in my species. For that is the manner in which they know the sun. They cannot see a sun which looks to the whole world. The sun of that individual or species or genus appears to it within narrow confines and under limiting restrictions. And it cannot ascribe to that restricted sun the works of the unrestricted, unconfined, absolute sun. For within those narrow restrictions and limited confines, it cannot attribute to the sun with the certain witnessing of the heart its majestic works, like furnishing the whole face of the earth with light and heat, stirring all plants and animals into life, and making the planets revolve around it. Indeed, if those three things, which we suppose to have consciousness, ascribe those wondrous works to the sun, which they see under those restrictions, They can only do so with the mind and through belief, and through submitting to the fact that that restricted thing is absolute. Whereas these judgments of flower, droplet, and atom, which we suppose to possess reason like a human being, that is, they're ascribing those mighty works to the sun, is through the mind and reason. It is not through illumination. Indeed, sometimes their judgments concerning belief clash with their illuminations about the cosmos. They can only believe them with great difficulty. Now the three of us must enter into this comparison, which is narrow for reality, but in some of the corners of which the members of reality are to be seen, and which is mixed with reality. The three of us shall suppose ourselves to be flower, droplet, and atom, for the consciousness which we suppose them to have insufficient. We must add our reasons to theirs. Okay. That is to say, just as they receive effulgence from their physical sun, we too shall receive effulgence from our immaterial sun and must understand it.
1 second. Before we continue, I'm trying to understand the ending of the previous paragraph, like before we get into the story.
Yeah.
It says, indeed, sometimes their judgments concerning belief clash with their illuminations about the cosmos. They can only believe them with great difficulty. Do you guys understand what that means? Like what it's referring to?
I would say, from my understanding, this refers to people who follow the second way, where there are barriers, and that's the path of sainthood. And it's not a direct, because it's not a direct path, because there are barriers, there are things that, as it says, creates a clash with their illuminations.
Okay, so these are the people that, without revelation, without illumination, they try to make sense of the world through their own intellect and beliefs. And
No, not exactly.
no,
Because so he talked about those 9 different classes, right? And in the third class, in the first layer, he said that it is prophethood, people of prophethood. And he said, even within this class, this category, there are 2 ways. What I understand is, somebody might be benefiting from prophet and might be in the path of prophethood, but still might be putting some intermediaries, whatever that intermediary is, we need to talk about. But that person might be receiving the light directly from the Creator, or putting some sort of an intermediary between him and the Creator. And this intermediary might be a person's heart as well, not necessarily a sheikh or something. And I don't know truly what that means, but the second way is putting some sort of an intermediary. I get to know, I'm trying to deduce something about my Creator through whatever I observe in that mirror. But whatever I observe in that mirror is a restricted entity anyways. So it's being hard for me with my feelings to conclude that that Creator is absolute and the one that takes care of everything. I can only say this through my intellectual conclusions. But when it comes to my feelings, this is why I guess he says it opposes their illuminations. It is like their personal sensing. Because their personal sensing is a limited sun. There is a limited notion of Creator within me.
Okay, you see all these deaf children in a war, while your mind, your reasoning tells you that the Creator is the most merciful one. What you see there tells something opposite. This is what I understand.
so illumination is what you see,
It's a shuhud. So what you see, yes.
and belief is what revelation tells you. Is that what we're saying?
He says it's not true illumination. Indeed, sometimes their judgments concerning belief clash with their illumination. So you have a judgment, you have a conclusion that the Creator is the most compassionate one, all merciful one. And then somebody sends an atomic bomb to Japan, and all the kids are there.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You can continue.
And so, my friend who has not forgotten the world is preoccupied with materiality and whose soul is dense. You be flower. Flower takes on a color dissolved from the sun's light, and it mixes the sun's image in with that color and clothes itself in an adorned form, for your capacity resembles it as well. Then let this philosopher who has studied secular science and is plunged in causes like the old Said be droplet, which is enamored of the moon, for the moon affords him the shadow of light it has received from the sun, and it gives us a light to the pupil of his eye. Droplet, too, shines with the light, but he can only see the moon with it. He cannot see the sun. Rather, he can only see it through his belief. Then let this poor man be Adam, who knows everything to be directly from Almighty God and considers causes to be a veil. He is such an Adam that knows himself to be poor in his own self. He has nothing on which to depend so as to rely on himself like flower. He possesses no color that he should appear through it, and he does not recognize other things that he should turn towards them. He has a sheer purity by which he holds the sun's image directly in the pupil of his eye. Now, since we have taken the place of these three things, we must consider ourselves. What do we have? What must we do? Thus, we look and see that through his favors, a most munificent one is adorning, illuminating, and nurturing us. And man worships one who bestows favors on him. He wants to be close to one worthy of being worshipped and desires to see him. In which case, in accordance with our capacities, each of us journeys through the attraction of that love. You who is like flower, you are going, but go as a flower. See, you have gone. You have advanced and advanced till you have reached a universal degree, as though you have become like all flowers. But flower is a dense mirror. It dissolves and refracts the seven colors in light. It conceals the sun's reflection. You will not be successful in seeing the face of the sun which you love, for the colors and characteristics which are restricted disperse it. Draw a veil over it and obscure it. In this situation, you cannot be saved from the separation which occurs with the interposing of barriers. However, you can be saved on one condition, which is that you raise your head, which is sunk in the love of your own soul, and withdraw your gaze, which glories and takes pleasure in its own merits, and cast it at the face of the sun in the sky. But on condition, you turn your face looking down to the earth and gain your livelihood up to the sun. For you are its mirror. Your duty is to act as a mirror to it. Whether you know it or not, your sustenance will anyway come from the earth, the door to the treasury of mercy. Yes, a flower is a minuscule mirror of the sun, and the sun, too, is merely a drop-like flash manifesting in the seas of the skies the name of light of the pre-eternal sun. O heart of man, understand from this of what sort of a sun you are the mirror. After fulfilling this condition, you will find your perfection. But just as in actual reality you cannot see the sun in that way, so you cannot understand this truth naked. The colors of your attributes give it a color, and your cloudy telescope imposes a form on it, and your limited capacity restricts it.
Thank you. So, inshallah, I think we should go like sentence by sentence, not paragraph by paragraph. It's a dense topic. I guess we can start from, and so my friend. Unless you had you guys wanted to discuss the other paragraphs, but I think we just start from the story or the comparison. And he says, and so my friend who has not forgotten the world is preoccupied with materiality and whose soul is dense. You be flower. So I guess he's explaining what flower is here. Who has not forgotten the world is preoccupied with materiality and whose soul is dense. You be flower. Flower takes on a color dissolved from the sun's light, and it mixes the sun's image in with that color and clothes itself in an adorned form. For your capacity resembles it as well. So my capacity resembles the capacity of a flower, which can only take a dissolved color from the sun, or it's a dissolved form of the sun's light, and it mixes the sun's light with itself and into its own clothes and color. So it's like it's not a very clear reflection. And this is how my capacity is as well, or the one that is a flower. Then let this philosopher, who has studied secular science and is plunged in causes like the old Said, be droplet, which is enamored of the moon. For the moon affords him the shadow of light it has received from the sun, and it gives a light to the pupil of his eye. So he says this philosopher who has studied secular science and is plunged in causes, and he's calling this person with these qualities a droplet, enamored of the moon, and he says that the moon affords him the shadow of light. So he sees like a shadow of light, he doesn't see the light directly, and he gives us some sort of light to the pupil of his eye. He says droplet 2 shines with the light, but he can only see the moon with it. He cannot see the sun. So there's some light there in the second step with the droplet, but it is only the shadow through the moon. It's a shadow of the light. Rather, he can only see it through his belief. I guess this is similar to what we were saying about if I see murder or an atomic bomb, it doesn't seem so merciful. So I through that lens. So I need to use my belief or my conclusions. I can only believe through my conclusions that he is merciful, but not through that specific thing. Then let this poor man be Adam. Is he talking about his current state? This poor man? Maybe he's talking about him currently.
He didn't say that. Probably the humility. So don't impose it, please.
No, because the first one was his friend, second one was his old self, and the third one is now him.
But he only praises him, so he's not really poor.
Okay.
We respect it.
No, because he becomes Adam, which is the greatest one anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. So someone is saying, then let this poor man be Adam, who knows everything to be directly from Almighty God and considers causes to be a veil. So the Adam is the person who knows everything to be directly from Almighty God and considers causes to be a veil. He is such an Adam that knows himself to be poor in his own self. So his quality is not being a philosopher or having studied secular science or plunging causes, or he's not preoccupied with materiality. What his quality is, he knows himself to be poor in his own self. This is the quality that defines him. He has nothing on which to depend, so as to rely on himself like flour. He doesn't depend on anything. He has nothing to depend on because he knows he's poor. And he possesses no color that he should appear through it. He possesses no color that he should appear through it. That's an interesting one. And he does not recognize other things that he should turn towards them. I'm just going to finish it and we'll come back. And he has a sheer purity by which he holds the sun's image directly in the pupil of his eye. Now, since we have taken the place of these three things, we must consider ourselves. What do we have? What must we do? So going back to the Adam one, which is, I guess, the crux of this. He's such an Adam that knows himself to be poor in his own self. He has nothing on which to depend, so as to rely on himself like flour. So I guess flour, and then he possesses no color that he should appear through it. So when it talks about flour, I guess the person that is the flour thinks that he possesses some type of color. And the person that was flower, just to reiterate, is the one that has not forgotten the world, is preoccupied with materiality, and whose soul is dense. I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to be a materialist. I would say that's a description that could fit me easily. Yes.
So I guess we see, yes, the example of this in every one of us. Like we study for the famous, we study to, I don't know, gain more wealth. But by doing so, we also remember God from time to time. We are, for instance, we become thankful because we gain all this wealth. We say, Alhamdulillah, you know, I have such a beautiful Toyota Camry. Right? We say, Alhamdulillah, you know, I have this, I have that. And I have certain feelings. When I feel, let's say, anxious or fearful, I'll say, oh God, please forgive me. Oh God, please save me. Oh God, whatever. So I guess, as he said, like our soul, what we have, what we are doing, what we are achieving, what we are fearful of, is at the center. This is what we are. But still, through them, we can still reach to our sustainer. Like as we gain more wealth, for instance, we become more familiar, quote unquote, with our sustainer, which is a sincere thing. It's not, you know, insincere. It's a sincere thing. Or as we lose wealth, we pray for some more wealth to our sustainer, again, which is sincere. But it's all about our wealth. It's all about what we need here. I guess. What I read.
Soul is dense. You're taking it to mean like your sense of self is very dense.
My self of sense is very dense, but at the same time, I guess it's dense in a way that when it reflects, whatever we get is very much, I don't want to say distorted, but deformed or reformed light of sun. It dense as an opposite of transparent.
Okay.
So when we talk about our sustainer, it is mostly shaped by what we have, what we want to have. I lost my child, so I have to be patient. Sometimes my creator can be angry, right? Sometimes my creator can be angry, but I have to be patient because I'm shaping my sustainer through my own soul, through what I have.
So here he says, and everyone feel free to make a comment, whatever you want. You have a comment? Okay, brother, you said that.
The first one he says, who has not forgotten the world, which makes the question that the second and the third forgot the world. What does he mean by that? So it looks like these are the most identifying, unique aspects of each one of them. This is how I am saying. Like, I'm not sure if the second one and the third one forgot the world, whatever forgetting the world means. But it looks like the first one is
that's his defining characteristic.
Yeah, defining, distinguishing characteristic is it's more about the world. So, and still, these people are trying to find truth, and they find light to some extent, maybe to a good extent, because he says, still there is a way for the flower to see the sun. But the primary focus or the major method that this mindset follows is centered at world. We can question what that means. And being preoccupied with materiality. And also denseness of the soul might be like
Ducks.
so it might even be that denseness of the soul is sort of how we evolve in this head if I am flower. I mean, in the discussion we talked about methodology, right? So it might be that for a certain way to find truth, methodology of that group, it might be us, it might be somebody, whatever, that we define soul as a dense entity, rather than it being a transparent as droplet or atom. We might be defining soul, or in my personal life, I might be defining my soul as something which has a color in itself, rather than saying that what is me? Is there anything that belongs to me? But when I am living my life, I might be saying that, well, I'm smart, and it's part of me. And by attributing smartness to myself, I am trying to understand the intellect, the wise one. But still, I am painting the wise one with the color of my smartness. And I might be saying, that, of course, this is how I'm going to know my creator. But still, I am attributing smartness to myself. Or I might be saying that I am strong, whatever. But this attribution, I say, belongs to me. I still couldn't test this. And by attributing it to me, from there on, I am trying to make some judgment, some conclusion about my creator. I couldn't truly give up my ownership on any of these. It is mine, and using this, I get to know what is his, what belongs to the creator. So in this sense, I am preserving my own identity as a existing, pre-existing or self-existing entity. And intellectually, I might be saying that, no, of course it's coming from you, whatever. But when I'm living my life, I might be doing something like this as well. This is what I understand from soul being dense.
One addition, so I'm reading the paragraph which is at the end of the part we've read, before now wise philosopher. O heart of man, understand from this of what sort of sun you are the mirror. After fulfilling this condition, you will find your perfection. But just as in actual reality, you cannot see the sun in that way, just like in reality, a flower cannot look at the sun directly. So you cannot understand this truth naked. The colors of your attributes give it a color, and your cloudy telescope imposes a form on it, and your limited capacity restricts it. So although we say, even if you are a flower, you can find a perfection, it says like your perfection. So there's a point that you can reach, you should target it, but it is itself a limited one. He says the same thing with a philosopher at the end of the next paragraph. But like your previous friend, you will not be able to see the sun clearly. So, yes, like this, there are different paths. As we discussed with the flowers, you attributing everything to yourself, to your soul, and living your life in that way. But at the same time, making some inferences about your creator through what you have. It may take you to a point about your creator, but this perfection, even if you use this methodology in a perfect way, in its own limits, the point you will reach will be a limited understanding. For instance, he will then give an example. I don't want to jump forward, but I guess it's a good example. He says, for instance, somebody who doesn't see the sun, always living in the nighttime, he only sees its moon, example, he cannot, experience the sun, daylight, but he will accept that there must be a sun. So his understanding of sun will be definitely less than people of daylight. So he will reach his perfection saying that there must be sun, because I see this moon shining. But it's not the same thing as living the daylight. The same way, the flower, yes, there is a perfect point. There's a perfection of, looking at yourself and reaching your sustainer. But it will be still, what you reach is shaped by what you claim to have in your life. It will be always a limited form from a cloudy telescope. That's essential.
This reminds me of in the Thanksgiving retreat, we said living with belief, like the moon example. Like we conclude that there must be the sun, but we're not actually living in the knowledge of the sun. We're seeing the sun. We conclude it's there, but we don't live in such a fashion. It reminds me of that. Going back to what Brother Yusuf said though, about the first person. So you said it's one who, I guess you draw your own circle, and then now you learn through your own intellect, to your own strength or whatever, you then learn about him. But then I'm trying to then go to the next step, which is, he says, then let this philosopher who has studied secular science and is plunged in causes, like the old Sayyidi droplet, which is enamored of the moon, and he can only see the moon with it, he cannot see the sun. How would you say is the difference from the first flower to the droplet in this case? Because it still seems in the droplet that he's plunging causes. So he's still drawing a circle around himself. Or around things, like he's saying things have ability or some strength by themselves, as in the flower did. Like why is so we're saying that droplet is better than the flower, right? We're saying something like this. It does seem to say he's placing droplet after flower. Droplet is more of a reflection, better. But reading this, I almost want to say droplet doesn't seem to be better than flower.
Between flower and droplet, I'm not sure. They're just, different ways of being limited. I don't know if one is better than the other. Like, that doesn't mean one is not better than the other. It only means that I don't see it clearly.
And there's different ways of not seeing it clearly.
Yes.
Okay, then let's leave a question mark. And then continue with the Adam. Then let this poor man be Adam, who knows everything to be directly from Almighty God and considered causes to be a veil. He is such an Adam that knows himself to be poor in his own self. So his soul is not dense, we could say. He knows himself to be poor in his own self. He has nothing on which to depend so as to rely on himself like flower. He possesses no color that he should appear through it. This one kind of, so I guess by saying he possesses no color, he's saying that he doesn't see like causes having any effect. And in his own intellect, he attributes it to God. He says that I don't own any of the things that are given to me, like my intellect and my strength. This is what it means by he possesses no color, is what I'm understanding. Actually, before you, Mohammed Said, you have a comment?
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to think aloud by benefiting from the comments shared before. Thank you all. My question was about this droplet. or the second way, was like there is still a light. It is reflecting from the moon, in the story, but there is a light. And what is it in my experience? Well, how can I relate myself to the situation? It's the light in
Baba Joe,
Efendim.
the oven is not gonna work.
Oh, it's okay. Let me complete my talk. Okay, give me a moment, please. In the last case, in the case of Atom, he brings this. He mentions about being poor, or poor, and in the case of the poor, let's say today there was a person talking about Jesus talking to his disciples, I think, and mentioning about being poor, and or the state of being poor, and the kingdom of God will be with the poor, something like this. He mentioned about Jesus saying. It reminded me that conversation today, that the need of the need, or being needy, is specifically mentioned in this explanation, because it's the human situation, right? It is reality, but my awareness of this reality is always fluctuating, is always changing.
I don't know how to get my bubbles. I just want to blow bubbles in here.
Okay. And in the case of the second case, droplet, still having some light, reminded me that there's a way to get the things done, and it is universal, and we call them attempting to the right cause, and then we receive a result, which is a universal. And even in that state of mind that I find myself, or I choose to be in, I still have a reason to live. I still have a reason to consider the next moment or next day. It is like a light, a little light, which is, it is little because comparing what my need is, it is nothing, because the things themselves, or if my goal is the same nature of the things themselves, then I'm not receiving enough light in order to satisfy my real need, because my reality requires me to find meaning, and such a meaning that is completely satisfactory, a complete enlightening. And in the case of poor, actually, through the help of that being needy, there is a way to kind of connect to receive the light from or receive the right answer, receive or to be connected to something that can really fill this gap in me. So I would like to mention about the first one as well, and then hopefully complete my comment. the flower, and in the case of flower, as Yusuf mentioned, he mentions about preoccupied with materiality. I think it is my connection, my communication takes place. My value, the existence takes place over the things. I value the things, and that is the first reason for me to be
Baba.
Efendim?
Could you please help me find
Guys, I'm sorry arkadaşlar. I will put it an end here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Unfortunately, it ended early, but I enjoyed them. Brother Yusuf, you had a comment?
So yes, so I'm trying to just, this might be one of the meanings, but I find it more relevant to myself as like a case study and example. So in the second one, for instance, since he says plunge into causality, so this reminds me of like those trying to find the creator through while preserving causes, trying to find a creator, let's say at the end of this creates this, this creates that, but eventually there has to be a creator. So pretty much intellectually, I am trying to come up with a proof that God exists. And at the end, what I arrive is just God exists. That's all I arrive. This is why I guess he says it's like moonlight. Moonlight is just white light. You don't see much of a color in there, in the moonlight. And if you just try to prove the existence of the creator, this is what you get. Still, it gives you a security. It is a bit more lighter, if you like, not dense, the opposite of dense. It's lighter than the flower one. But this one is giving you a, if you like, second order or derived color of sun. It's not as vivid as the color of sun, and it's cold as well. This is also another important part, I guess, in the metaphor. Moonlight is cold. Sunlight is warm. So in this second path, when you go with the emphasis in here is a learned philosopher. The person is going through a serious education. He said, studied secular sciences. In original text, it is like formal education, I would say. Not necessarily secular sciences, but some sort of a formal education. You go through some intellectual effort and give quite a bit of an effort to arrive to concluding existence of the sun. But that much you can go. You just say sun exists. And that is quite a cold knowledge that you get. It's a light, but it's not warm. And when I personally go through, let's say, the proofs of Kalam scholars, this is how I feel like. And especially at some point when I was struggling a lot with does God exist or not, the sort of questions, Kalam scholars' proofs were sort of giving me light. But it is that sort of a cold light. So it's not warming inside me. Still, it saves me from the darkness. So in this sense, it is saving me from even further coldness of dark. But when it comes to, in terms of feeling the warmth, it's not there. It's just removing the darkness away from me. And the first one, it reminds me of, I might be wrong, like for the flower, since the emphasis is about not forgetting the world, being immersed in materiality, it is like I'm living my day-to-day life, and I'm not living like everyone, I would say, like a regular people do. And I say, but still, I'm trying to see creator by saying that, oh, as like a overall umbrella understanding, umbrella term, like, yeah, all these beautiful food are provided to me by my creator. But still, here and there, when it comes to details, I'm not able to see my creator each and every day. And also I say that, well, of course we have to work for the world. Of course, I mean, still I am insecure. I feel like as if worldly life is essential to me, in a sense that if I get detached from it, I am going to just become non-existent. So I am worried about, as if my existence is contingent upon this worldly life. I'm not taking this one as, of course, you do observe names of creator in this existence. How can you forget the world? This is not how I understand who has not forgotten the world. Eventually, yes, I am, through my experiences, I get to know the creator. Through eating an apple, I get to know my creator. There's not the emphasis in the first one, to my understanding. As of the first guy is saying that he's very much fearful of losing the world. But still this person is able to find creator additionally on top of that. So it's not entirely clear. Something is, like the light is being distorted. Each flower is actually distorting sunlight, if you like. Sunlight is being distorted because you start seeing just one color of the sun over a flower. So truth is being discovered. Part of the truth is being hidden actually, because it's only showing you pink, but it is covering up all the other colors. And if you think in between lines, he alluded to that. How does the optics work? The flower appears to you as pink because this is the only color that it reflects. All the rest of the colors it absorbs, or it just covers up, if you like. So then I say, yeah, of course I have to work to worldly life with the fear that I am going to lose my existence. I am absorbing some of the lights, just not reflecting them. Therefore, I am losing it. But when it comes to third, it feels like, as Nursi is explaining in elsewhere as well, with this poorness, and Mohammed say very well put it, with the poorness, I'm realizing that whatever is on me, who is me really? Like, as Nursi is explaining when it comes to ego, he says ego is just like a measuring stick, like a thermometer. Thermometer measures temperature, but it doesn't have any heat in and of itself. When it comes to flower, in this metaphor, flower is as if saying that I can measure heat and I have some heat. But in the third, the mindset of the third person is, no, I am just a thermometer. There is no heat in me, no nothing in me. I can just measure it, but I don't have anything about it. So this sense of poorness, I guess, is this way of leading the existence, anything in this existence is simply his manifestation, if I take it as such. I don't know if it makes sense.
We have a comment from Aisha. Only reflecting one color is not equal to blocking other colors. I don't make that mean. So this is, would you like to explain this?
I mean, from in the context of his example, I guess it's blocking other colors.
Yeah.
Like this is
being visible.
Sorry?
Like it's blocking the colors from being visible.
Oh, so it's just absorbing others using their energy for itself.
Yes.
So you don't have any, like, we don't have any wavelets left there. So his example was a good example in that sense. It is blocking other colors because it's taking the other colors, using it for itself, feeding itself through them, and nothing left for others to see.
And then we have another comment from Hatice Beyzai. She says, isn't there a distinction being made of the flower, for example, in the first way versus the second way? How are we to understand this? Isn't there a distinction being made of the flower, for example, the first way versus the second way? How are we to understand this?
The first way, second way, meaning drag and indrag.
Yeah.
So in the case of flowers, you look at your colors, you say that they are so beautiful, and you talk about the beauty of your creator. Is indirect, I guess. And then the direct way is looking at the sun, he says. But as far as I understand, he defines it as a kind of like a aim that you should have. But as he says at the end of the paragraph, that you cannot do that, really. I have some other comments, actually, rather than answering this.
Go ahead with your comments. Well, other people are thinking.
With what Mohammed Saeed and Ben Yusuf said, I really like both of them. So
you like us or our comments?
Oh, you not your comments. They go like a trash. And especially like saying no, nothing. It's a string language that you can use on streets, not in a serious discussion. Anyway. No, their comments, they were really helpful. So going back to Yusuf's example, for instance, plunging in the works of world or worldly life. So yes, we say that we know about our Creator through our experiences. We know about Creator through observing the universe and so on. But when it comes to flower, when it comes to this dense soul, I guess what we say is like we know our sustainer through eating apple, but then we say, oh, you know what? We should eat the best apple. This is how we know our Creator. The Muslim people, they have to have the best wealth. We should have the best air fighters.
Tesla.
We have to, we have to have the best cars, right? So yes, like we know our sustainer through our experiences, but with the petal of flowers, the value, so-called inherent value of the experience itself becomes the main motivating factor. Like you want to eat apple, and then say, oh yeah, of course, I know my Creator through apple, so I should eat the best apple. But when it comes to petal of atom, I guess this is why Mohammed Said's comment is important about poorness. You know your Creator maybe even better. Like, I'm not trying to say that you should leave everything about the worldly life, you should go to the cave, whatever. But when you experience hunger, this is, at least the way I understand, is a more direct way of knowing your Creator. Still, to experience hunger, you should be experiencing the world. You should be sometimes eating apple and knowing your Creator through apple. But when you are most honest to yourself, that you cannot even feed, or all these apples of the world cannot help you when your Creator doesn't sustain you with them. Or when you fail in your work, when you realize, sincerely, I'm not talking about, failing and saying that, okay, next time I will do better, I rely on my sustainer. I'm talking about within the failure. You realize that this is your reality. The failure itself, like, I'm not, again, repeating this a lot because I don't want people to imagine that I'm suggesting them, fail on purpose. But when you, from time to time, when you fail, when you really fail, and when you take it as an opportunity to know your real self, this is me, I'm nothing. And be satisfied with it. Be satisfied with the prayer that you do when you fail. When you open your hands and asking for forgiveness, asking for help, asking for companionship, and being satisfied with this fact. This is the best you can get. Companionship of my Creator. Now, when you are honest with yourself, most honest with yourself, you realize that you are poor, that you are weak. I guess this is becoming transparent. Otherwise, yes, we will know our Creator through our work. But you can say that, I will be the best scientist, I will be the best engineer, I will be the best artist. I have to show how believers, can do the best things. To me, this is petal flower. Or you study universe and you study wonders, like a wondrous art of the universe. You see the order in the universe, you make all these conclusions about the universe, about the Creator. Making conclusions. But still, it's still something out there. He is the one who gives the order to everything. He is the one who creates every food, every whatever. But it's still out there. It's, as Yusuf beautifully saying, it's a cold truth. But when you are hungry, when you have the hunger, and when you have nothing but Him to return, and when you don't see it as suffering, but as a source of satisfaction, that I'm with my Creator, finally. Finally, I, have a moment out of all these worldly stuff that I'm, occupied with. Now I have a moment with my Creator. Then it's a warm truth that He is the one who sustains.
Okay, thank you. There's some comments, but before that, I think the biggest difference from all the comments that materialize in my mind is with the flower, just like you said, let's have the best apple. I eat a bad apple, I can get a better apple, and I can know my Creator through this apple. And it's a very distant relationship to your Creator. You need to have a better apple to almost reach your Creator. Even then, it's a very weak relationship. Or with the moon example, where you go through the chain of causes to be able to prove God, it's a very distant relationship to the Creator. You make that connection very slowly. However, with the Adam example, with the Adam example, you make the connection to the Creator almost instantly. It's very translucent. You look at a flower petal, which has color, but you don't get stuck there. You instantly connect it to the Creator with the Adam because of the poorness that you realize when you see something even as small as taste. You witness taste, you feel taste, you instantly make the connection to your Creator. It acts as a very quick connection to your Maker, to your Creator. And Suhail had his hand up, so go ahead, Suhail.
Okay, so while y'all all are talking, I was reading from the beginning again. So I think, relating to what everybody said, I think this is his sort of framework, if I had to put a technical aspect to it. So he has a 3x3 table, which are these 3 levels. And let me just back up. I guess to begin with, you have a flower, droplet, and atom are sort of synonymous with your experience of the universe. So they're they're what you experience. That's your living reality. And how you interpret that reality is dependent on the 3 ways, either intellectual thought, sainthood, or prophethood. And at the base level, there's intellectual thought, sainthood, and prophethood. And if you go to a level deeper than that, you are seeking perfection. If you were just to follow intellectual thought, perfection of the bodily systems. That's what, to give a tangible example, intellectual thought, people say, I need to make my life better, or I'm going to make some X and Y and Z to make my life better, or I'm going to improve this or that. So purely focused on material reality. So if you take intellectual thought and you go one step deeper, that's the next sort of logical step, is to say, I'm going to improve this. And that's the human tendency to do so. The next step, the next sequential step of sainthood, as he says, is the refinement of the mind and the soul. The next step of prophethood is belief submission and purifying the heart. But what is the step beyond those things? So for intellectual thought, beyond bodily systems, the improvement of bodily systems, what is the natural consequence of that is egotism. Because in intellectual thought, when you are improving something for its own sake, you think everything looks to its own sake. So in this regard, if I do something to make my life easier, I think I'm doing it and I'm responsible for it. And as he says, are plunged in works and approach reality through deduction and reasoning only. That's all you're concerned about, is the thing itself. For sainthood, the step of sainthood, as he says, is striving with the mind and refining the soul, which takes you then to, and of those who search for reality through knowledge and science, reason, and learning. So they, in a way, this one's a little bit, at least for me, more difficult to explain. They're almost as if like looking at reality and trying to, I guess, sort of use that to improve the self, the mind and the soul. Kind of to what Yusuf's example is, like, coming up with all of these arguments to sort of, make sense of the world, these logical deductions. Whereas prophethood, which is belief, submission, and purifying the heart, approach reality that, if you think about it, it's really approaching reality swiftly through belief in the Quran, poverty, and worship. That is the quickest path. Now, each of those three groups, if I'm understanding this correctly, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, each of those three groups can be flower, can be droplet, or can be atom. So an intellectual thought person who's a flower, he essentially becomes a materialist because he looks at one thing and that's all he's concerned about. And he thinks things exist for their own selves. He himself is a flower, and that's what he's living himself as just an individual flower amongst a sea of flowers. That same person of intellectual thought who's a droplet may see some connection, some weak connection between other flowers other than himself. But he's still eventually an egotist. Or if he becomes an atom, he sees a connection between himself as an individual and all other things, but they all still look to themselves. So he has a universal perspective, but everything still looks to itself in a way. I guess maybe an example I would compare is like people who think that, everybody is their own sort of spiritual being and everything else in the universe is own spiritual being, so to speak. The spirit permeates the universe. That's a very egocentric view of the world, but it's an atomistic view of the world because you think every being in the world has some sort of its own sort of egocentric view, if that makes sense. For sainthood, flower, you can also have flower, droplet, and atom, but as I said, not to rehash what was said before, it's still weak. Like it's not as swift as prophethood. You can be a saint and have an atomistic view of the world, but you're still stuck on the atoms themselves. Like you kind of, I guess, maybe gleaned something from it. If I understand, I don't know if I'm understanding this completely correctly. And then prophethood takes you directly to the sun, regardless of the experience that you're having, I guess. So you can have a prophetic experience as a flower, but it's a sort of maybe like, I don't know, weak experience of prophecy, I think. like you kind of just take whatever the truths of prophethood are and take them as is for granted as your individual flower and kind of go about your life. Or you can kind of maybe gain some sort of glimpse of prophecy through the droplet example. So you're still sort of stuck on, you're still looking at things like, I guess maybe an example would be, I need to eat the best apple or something like that to get some sort of knowledge of God. Whereas Adam looks at the perspective as on the way of prophethood, all atoms are the same. So regardless if I eat the best apple or the quote unquote worst apple, it doesn't matter. I'm connected directly to the source of existence. That's what I understood from this. I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm totally off base, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, it wasn't on me. Thank you, Sahel. It's a different way of reading that I hadn't thought of before. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm right. This is what I took from it. But that's what I thought he was. Because if you go to the original paragraph on this, I thought he was saying, there are sort of 9 groups. He says himself there are 9 groups, and I thought each of those groups could be flower, droplet, and atom. But that I could be wrong. That might be a wrong reading of it. So somebody else has a different reading of it.
No, thank you for your reading and your comments. It's always good to express ourselves. That goes for everyone. Atik.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, or I wanted to try to answer H. Beza's question about, how do we understand the flower, droplet, and atom through the first and second ways? From what I understand, the ways are different methods, 2 different methods of receiving light, or receiving guidance, I guess. One is direct, and the other indirect, and that the flower, droplet, and atom itself is supposed to represent a manifestation after you receive the light. And so I understood that, receiving direct light, right? Like the sun shines upon all creatures, animals, plants, living, non-living things of the earth with a single light, right? No filters. And the second method is, let's say you put a filter there. You put a tinted glass, and so now anything behind the tinted glass will receive only a specific type of light, not the full light. And so that's like the barrier. And so based on that, the flower will manifest, based on what it's receiving, the flower manifests it, this light that it receives, whether filtered or non-filtered, in a different way. And so the droplet as well and the atom as well, based on their own internal, method or mechanism of expressing light, if that makes sense, right? Like even if the flower receives pure sunlight, it is still a flower and it can only manifest one color. Or if it's a different variation of flower, have more than one color or something like that. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
Let's see, Lisa has her hand up.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the comment. I guess what I was thinking about was, in what makes a flower, like it says, like takes on the color dissolved from the sun's light and mixes the sun's image with it, and with that color encloses itself in an adorned form. So there's this like restriction, limitation, or Zaishiner's comment where she was saying like it reflects one color, right? So whatever color that flower is, it reflects that color which we see. So there's already this sort of like limitation or restriction placed on it. So when we come to the 2 different paths, like one being direct and the other one being indirect, I was trying to understand, maybe it's me just trying to pull the example, stretching it too far, but like it's already in a way limited. So what aspect of this like restricted, limited way in which the flower, for example, reflects the light is then direct? I mean, it's still direct in the sense that I guess it directly reflects one color, or isn't it that it absorbs all the colors except one? Yeah, so it's like it has all these qualities except one, or it reflects one, whatever, for the sake of this example. But then there has to be, like, I don't know, I'm just like, how, if it is already within this scope of, or within this, you know, definition of limited or restricted, then how is one aspect, how can it in one respect be direct and in another respect be indirect? I don't know if that made any sense, but.
No, thank you for your comment. That's actually your question is a question I see that I also share. In drugs, I'm not sure what that comment was, if you want to explain that. But the question of, like, because a flower is still a flower, and then if we're saying that if you see the flower's color and you see that it has a color to itself, and this is an indirect manifestation, there's an indirect reflection, and we're saying that then how is it possible to have a direct reflection through, or how can the sun directly hit the flower? And the way I understand is you still need a flower. You can't just ignore if the flower is supposed to be reflecting this, you still need a flower somehow. The only thing I can see is, like, the flower still exists, but it's just extremely clear. Like, it's not opaque. And, or the other way I actually take it is, when you see that color, you immediately make the connection to the sun. Like, the flower becomes an immediate, like, stone or step to taking you to the sun. It's very clear in taking you there. It's very fast. Whereas if it's indirect, the flower is a long, like, detour. Like, that color on the flower acts as, like, a long detour. And currently, that's how I understand how you can have a direct and indirect way through a flower. Brother.
So the way I understand when he talks about the direct indirect with the flower is that if you look at your colors, you will see that, okay, I'm pink. And then, let me read this part. See, you have advanced and advanced till you have reached a universal degree, as though you have become like all flowers. So you look at your color, you see that, oh, this is pink, I have pink. This is how I am created. You look at other flowers, Yusuf, it's like a flower. Purple, okay. You say, okay, he's purple. You look at another flower, beautiful one. What color you are?
Green. It's green. Green.
You?
I'm blue.
Okay, blue. You say he's blue. Through all these different flowers, you say, okay, all these different colors exist. You become more universal in the sense that there's a notion of color, different colors. Although I'm reflecting on the pink, there are other colors as well, and our sustainer are the creator of all these colors. This is indirect way of reaching universality or your creator. But he says, but don't forget that although you have pink, you're receiving sun's light and only reflecting pink. Don't forget, like, look at the sun, meaning don't forget you're receiving everything you have from him. Pink is something that you choose to reflect to others, but all other colors coming from him to you. You have experience of all the other colors as well. Don't attribute this pinkness to yourself, and you realize that you're receiving these colors, you're receiving this light. You're receiving your wealth, you're receiving your intellect, you're receiving your feelings, whatever. Do not start from your own colors. Do not start, make generalizations through different colors you see around. But realize that you're receiving everything from him. And interesting, he gives one condition to be successful on that, as Yusuf was alluding, that on the condition that you take from your gaze from earth, which you look for sustenance, to the sun. So we cannot do that. We cannot look at the sun directly when we are flower. Because we are so plunged, we are so connected to the earth as a source of sustenance, that without earth I cannot survive. I'm receiving everything I need from the earth. I have to work to earn money. I have to get married to experience love. I have to have X, I have to have Y, whatever. He says, this is so hard for you. So whatever you do, you will always talk about your pink color. So this is what I understand from. So when he says in drag, I guess a drag means just realize that everything is coming from sun. As he says, for you are its mirror, your duty is to act as a mirror to it. Whether you know it or not, your sustenance will anyway come from the earth, the door to the treasury of mercy. So do not worry about your sustenance. It will come to you so that you can experience mercy, but just realize that you are nothing but mirror. You don't have pink color.
I might be wrong, correct me. So, flower, so let's say in terms of my intellect, if I take one step back and use my intellect as a mirror, intermediary mirror between whatever I call as I, me, and the all-wise one. So I know that my intellect is limited. So if I try to get to know my maker through limitedness of my intellect, then I am already putting a boundary to the extent that I can sense or feel all-wise one. But because in this sense I am making myself as a dense entity. This was the description of flower, right? And I say that I have this intellect, and as a fact, I know that I have limitations, I have boundaries. But if I don't take myself as, my consciousness here, my intellect is here, then through this mirror, I am getting to know my creator. But rather, if I say that, no, just analyzing this intellect itself as if just I am made to learn, I am made to think, rather than putting boundaries around it. Just the very fact that I am being given this ability in the first place. Now, as if I am removing this second order relationship and taking myself as if now intellect, in the previous case, intellect was a, if you like, lens through which I see the existence. Now I'm saying that no, don't make it as a limited lens or limited entity. Rather, just experience the feeling itself and say, where is this coming from? How is this happening? Because the interesting thing is, when I, let's say, taste something, when I get excited about something, just definitely if I try to draw boundaries about my excitement, I can define some sort of it. But if I just don't get lost in there, and rather say that, well, how does this excitement happen really? It's something quite new for me. And since we get used to life, there are being some occasions which can give us some highlights, such as when your daughter is being born for the first time. It's a brand new feeling for you. You have never experienced such a thing in your life. So then you can question, rather than trying to put boundaries around this feeling, trying to materialize it and attributing it to myself, making it dense, rather than that, just question, where does this come from? I have never tasted such a thing before. So if I do it in this way, I guess, now I am directly, still I'm a flower, still I might be attributing things to myself, but now I am, rather than trying to making it more dense and reducing it to myself, I am saying that forget about that. This is not my concern now. Where did this come from? This is something for the first time coming out of my heart. My heart was like a stone. This water is coming out for the first time. Where is this coming from? So this might be some sort of a difference. I'm not sure if it's clear because it's not very clear to me either. But I think sometimes I am making my intellect, my heart, my feelings as the intermediary that he is describing it here. And with them I am limiting because I think like they are limited. I don't know if it clarified at all, but something along those lines. I'm not clear either. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. That helped me. It didn't help me. I'm sure it helped others. Okay, then I guess we can continue from where we left off. Unless someone has a comment they'd like to make. And if you do, just raise your hand or leave a comment. So the lessons I read was, I think, he has nothing on which to depend so as to rely on himself like flower. He possesses no color that he should appear through it. And he does not recognize other things that he should turn towards them. So there's no intermediary for him. He has a sheer purity by which he holds the sun's image directly in the pupil of his eye. Again, no intermediary. And I guess the biggest quality he has is being poor again, by realizing his poorness and not attributing things to himself. He's able to do this. Now, since we have taken the place of these three things, we must consider ourselves. What do we have? What must we do?
So, just to make one small comment. So as people in here must have seen Moshe's description of ego. So in this third stage, the person is, as he will later on explain in the 38th word, still the ego is there, but not egotism is there. He is not claiming those things on himself. He is not dense. He is like this transparent thing. But still there is this some sort of a apparent existence right there, but he's not attributing anything to himself. So I guess this is the difference. To what extent, personally, now I'm asking myself, to what extent I am attributing qualities that are being manifest on me to myself, or how much am I transparent? To the extent that I attribute it to myself, intellectually or feeling-wise, whatever, then I am this dense one. I am getting denser like a flower.
You don't absorb any colors yourself. You just like or let them all through.
In the third one, yes.
Yeah. Thus, we look and see that through his favors, a most munificent one is adorning, illuminating, and nurturing us. And man worships one who bestows favors on him. He wants to be close to one worthy of being worshipped and desires to see him. And man worships one who bestows favors on him. He wants to be close to one worthy of being worshipped and desires to see him. So how do we make the leap to, we look and see that through his favors, the most magnificent one is adorning, illuminating, and nurturing us. Like, how did we come to the conclusion that there was one that was adorning us? Or did he just jump to this?
They don't have light on themselves. None of them has light, right? But with the light that comes from outside, they start seeing colors or light to a certain extent. So they do say that, well, light is not from us. Within ourselves, we are dark. As much as we can experience or we sense, and darkness also means you don't even sense yourself. So as much as they can sense light, meaning existence, then they say that we are being illuminated, we are being nurtured. Like check yourself, for instance. Do you see any of those qualities within yourself? Or to whatever extent, you are aware that you are being given existence.
Do all three categories see this?
Yes, but to different levels.
So I think here the emphasis is about the favors. We look and see that through his favors, a most munificent one is adorning, illuminating, and nurturing us. Adorning, illuminating, nurturing, everything that we have, everything that we are given. And man worships one who bestows favors on him. When you receive something, you are thankful.
Even more, you worship.
Yes. He wants to be close to one worthy of being worshipped and desires to see him. In which case, in accordance with our capacities, each of us journeys through the attraction of that love. You who is like flower, you are going, but go as flower. So when I guess talking about a flower, it really makes sense talking about all these favors. So one example, for instance, we like always do, we say, look at our hearts. It beats that many times in a second. Such a big favor, such a big complex system I have here given to me. When it beats, faster than normal or slower than normal, it's a disease. So alhamdulillah, I have such a healthy heart. And through my healthy heart, I know my most munificent creator, sustainer, most merciful one. But I know it through, my perfectly working heart. I love it, so I have this attraction to the one who gives it to me.
Is that a direct relationship to the sun?
No, I think it's an indirect.
That's indirect stuff?
Yes.
I guess I'll never understand.
Okay, so let me talk about this. Look, I'm waiting to be like being frank, blunt moment.
Please.
Yes. So I think we all having difficulty understanding this text, especially this drag and drag, atom versus droplet, flavor, flower. Same letters.
Flower. We make bread.
Because, so this part is completely personal, okay? Please do not listen this as, anyone here other than me agrees. This is perfect, like 100% personal.
He says, he will say we are all flowers.
I think we're having this difficulty because in our circles, discussion circles and so on, we're giving too much emphasis on conclusions, knowing Creator through what we have, knowing Creator through conclusions we make from our experiences. I see the order in the universe, there must be an order giver. I see X in the universe, I make conclusion, there must be such a whatever. I think this is true to some extent. This is true when the point is communicating with others. It is true when it is you are in the phase of convincing yourself. But I think with this understanding, everything has to be through conclusions, everything has to be through, reasoning. I have to be convinced. This type of understanding is not wrong, it is true, but I think it's a droplet-like attitude. I think something is missing there. But because we take this as the motto, that everything has to be that way when it comes to belief, something is missing. And what is missing, I guess, is we are never left alone. We are never honest to ourselves. That I don't know my Creator best way through, conclusions I arrive or drive. I know best my Creator best way when I feel miserable, when I realize that I don't have anything, when I realize that sometimes I cannot make sense of anything, no matter how much I try. So I think we are having difficulty understanding, these differences, including myself. Because whatever I say, like we say, okay, we're looking at directly to the sun, whatever. Or knowing that is nothing from you, we're still trying to make some arguments. And yes, everything is coming from him. That means nothing from us. Therefore, we're not even able to live in the moment of not having anything. We're still trying to make sense of it through our intellects, through our reasoning. So when everything about belief or everything about our Creator comes through reasoning and conclusions, there's no place for being atom. And because this is our motto, conclusions, reasoning, you have to be convinced. Again, I'm not denying this part, but it's only a part. It's only true when you, talk to others, for instance. It's only true when you share your ideas with others. It's only true when you don't have any sense of, belief, but trying to come to a point where you can hold. But it has to be a moonlight at the end. If you want to sum, look at poverty, look at your weakness, look at the compassion that you are being treated with. What is the formula? Doesn't matter, just wrong. And with these, you have the direct access. But again, we are so much shaped with this idea of reasoning, conclusions. Again, I have to highlight, I'm not saying that they are wrong. I'm just saying that it's not the whole picture. It's not even the biggest part of the picture. But it's true, when you are in a circle, when you are discussing something, you cannot talk about your poverty, you cannot talk about your weakness with the others that much. You can share some experiences, you can share some stories, whatever. But you have to talk about some reasoning, you have to talk about some conclusions that you can share with others. But we are too much into it to the extent even when we pray, like making salah, for instance, we try to make sense of it. Oh, I'm making salah as a conclusion of whatever. But when you are alone meaning, when you are with yourself, when you have a potential, when you have a chance to be honest to yourself, you cannot understand anything if he's not giving you any understanding. Even in these honest moments, or even in these moments that can be honest, we try to shape it through our intellect, through our colors. Thus, I think we are having difficulty understanding this. Again, including myself.
So, looking at the heart that's pumping steadily, by the way, I enjoyed everything you said, thank you. Looking at the heart that's pumping steadily, and then seeing how it's being created, this is an indirect relationship. It's indirect. To make this direct, how would I then go about making this direct? Would I see how impotent I am, how needy I am, and then realize that there is one that is pumping this heart for me? Like, how can I use what I'm given to make that direct relationship with my poverty, as you're saying, without making conclusions?
So it's really hard to, I'm just trying to, remember some moments, for instance, when I sincerely wanted this heart to be, blown away, and, it's not enough for me. It's not good for me. I cannot live anymore this kind of moments. Not, in a bad sense that I hate life or so. It's just, again, like it's how do you explain poverty? How do you explain weakness?
Unbearable.
I like the idea about poverty, and then we have a lot of.
No, I guess the best, for instance, like in a one example, good example is from Yunus Emre. I don't know how to translate, but cennet cennet dedikleri, somebody translated it. Cennet cennet dedikleri birkaç köşk ve birkaç huri, isteyene ver onları, bana seni gerek seni. Like, he's talking about the heaven.
Yeah.
Right? He says even the heaven is a few palaces and a few huris, whatever they are. For ones who wants them, for those who want them, give them to them. But for me, it's you that I need. So going back to your heart example, this is a beautiful creation. I really enjoy it. But this is not what I want. This is not what I need. So I guess sometimes, like this will sound very cliche. When I first heard it from someone else, the name doesn't matter. I thought it was so cliche, so banal. But being, quote unquote, romantic with your life is something not bad.
What do you mean by that?
14th of February is getting close. So just give yourself a rose. Sorry.
No, I don't have any more to say like on that.
So realizing how even this heart that's created, it's just so lacking for you. It's not what you're seeking actually. You're seeking something much more than that. Is what but okay, there's a lot of comments, and then Suel has a stand up. By the way, these are his thoughts, not
I said it, yes.
approval.
I said it a few times.
Not
It's
through
my
vice versa circle.
100% personal thought.
Yes.
I know we're way over time, but I was just going to say I respectfully disagree with Birkan on his thoughts in that I won't say conclusions because me personally, and as Birkan said, that was his thought. These are my thoughts. I don't make a distinction between reason and what you feel. They go hand in hand, but I can't say for myself that if I'm not certain of my conclusion, to me, the heart's never satisfied. It's, to me, being carried on a wind. And that's just my personal experience. And that's what I see from, when I meet students who are sort of inundated by, as Nursi puts it, different ways. Their heart may want to believe and may want to submit and may want to communicate with the creator of the universe, but they don't know how to. It's as if the heart has no method or means to do so. And to me, that's what reason is used for. Reason is not in and of itself the ends. I agree with Birkan on this point. In and of itself, it doesn't mean, like, human being is not a machine, it's not a computer. But reason is the tool through which the heart can communicate with its source of existence. Otherwise, it's somewhat, I don't want to say completely baseless, because I won't go that far, but I will say it is weak. The foundation is very sort of shaky, and somebody can come along and completely destroy that foundation, and then you're left with nothing. You are dissatisfied, the heart's dissatisfied, and you have no source of existence that you're certain of, that you can communicate with. So, and I don't think Nursi makes that distinction, because he himself says, if you go back to the beginning of the section, he says himself that, the path of prophethood, those who approach it, so there's the path of prophethood in the first group. Then the layer below that, those who approach it through belief, submission, and purifying the heart. To me, they go all hand in hand. If you consider belief to be equal to reason, so to speak, submission and purifying the heart. And then below that, who approach reality swiftly through belief. To me, that's using reality and coming to a conclusion. And the Quran, poverty and worship, which is sort of okay, I see things for what they are. What does that mean for me? How do I make sense of it? Like, how do I make sense of how I feel about my position in this world? So to me, I'm not going to say reason is small and the heart is big, or that no one can actually say that. That's just arbitrary. But you need both. Whether people emphasize one or the other, I don't know what people generally do. But I know for myself, you know, on one hand, if I say Allahu Akbar, that's a conclusion in one aspect. But in another aspect, it's also reflective of how I feel about the world. So that's how I see things. Maybe why it's perceived that conclusions are emphasized is because in today's day and age, people don't even know what a conclusion is, quite frankly. They don't even know what belief conclusions are, by and large. Maybe in this, these circles, people do to some extent, or, however much they do. But out there in general society, no idea. That's partially why, Nursi wrote this work. The rise of atheism. You have atheism, you can feel whatever you want to feel. It doesn't connect you to anything. If anything, it just connects you to the rest of the world. And you're in sort of misery and pain. So that's how I see it.
Thank you, Suhail. I think what you said also makes sense. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive in any way. Okay, you have to be quick though, we're running out of time.
Okay. I guess we have to be also careful, not only quick. That, like, when we talk about that reasoning or conclusions, deductions, whatever, they're not the whole story. I guess we shouldn't quickly jump into conclusion of dichotomy that, oh yes, there's also heart, there's also feelings. I myself, for instance, not talking about this separation. I'm not, when I, like all the things that I said, I was not trying to say that we should also talk about our feelings and so on. But for instance, when I talk about my poverty, I know that I am poor. It's not only I feel, I know to the bones that I'm poor. When I fail, for instance, I know my reasoning was also at the place. But I don't know it through deductions, through driving from something. I know it. The only thing I need is being honest. So I guess just to highlight, like when I say it's not a whole picture, or like we shouldn't stop there and we are having difficulty because there's this emphasis. I'm not saying that we should be also people of feelings, we should be people of heart, whatever it means. I'm saying that there are certain things, or many things, or most of like a bigger picture, is that you know when you are honest to yourself, when you know that you are poor, you are weak. You open the compassion that the universe runs on.
So just one tiny note. So for the droplet, there was also an interesting thing, which is enamored of the moon. So as if this philosopher is obsessed with moon. So like prioritizing seeing the moon and seeing sun through moon. So as if the focus is shifted a little bit, maybe like a little bit from sun to moon. So yes, like Brother Birkom was saying, not to say don't go like this, don't go like that. But personally, I am feeling in my own experience that I am prioritizing a certain way of concluding about the Creator. As if I write it over the stone. This is how I can arrive, how one can arrive to the Creator. That's put it this way. So codifying it as a method or methodology. So this is a limitation in and of itself. So it can be a tool, and especially on the age of, this was again an defining property of the philosopher studied in a school. So especially in the age of knowledge or age of information, the attack is coming from that angle. Therefore, I am being in need of, as this is what I understood from Suhail, since I am being under attack with ideologies, I am feeling like I need to come up with something that just refutes those intellectual attacks. That is okay, and I think it's needed, but it's for, if you like, repulsing those ideas. Repulsing is one thing, but trying to reach truth through this is another thing. So intellect might be used like as a sweeper. It sweeps away the doubts, but still, in order to arrive to the sun or experiencing the third one, I think what Brother Birkan says makes sense. Because arriving to conviction through like poverty, impotence, is something that is beyond sweeping the doubts, which is the duty of intellect. So I guess sometimes since I have been under the attack of those unbelief ideologies throughout my life in all my education so far, I also felt like it is, I'm still feeling like it is number one thing that I need to do to just repel those ideologies. And this becomes like the moon that I am becoming enamored with. And I'm saying that through repelling them, it becomes my goal. But it's a restriction. This is what I'm understanding, considering what Brother Birkan is saying. I might be wrong. But I need to get beyond that as well. I mean, if you take it like as stages, or if I take it as phases of my life, I need to transition to another phase, and in which I guess the poverty and impotence I need to feel. So at that point, a question comes to me, well, without this phase of my life in which I am trying to reach the moon, was it not possible to go to the phase that Brother Birkan is mentioning? It looks like apparently it is. And because my impotence, no matter how many, if you like, scientists will come and tell me that, no, in the lab we showed this and that, I would say, well, I feel my impotence. I know it as a fact from here inside. If you can change and touch this, if you can fix my impotence, I'll go with what you say. So it would be possible, I think, even without this first stage. But there is one thing, which is I'm most of the time not honest to myself. I am thinking with the masses. If I see a lot of big titled people coming up with strong arguments against faith, and since I'm not honest to myself, either I am dense or I get lost in the material, like the flower, I am easily getting lost with as one brother was once saying, a professor with British accent, especially our biology professor, just mockingly says something about God, my belief gets shaken. This is my reality. If I was able to be honest, as Brother Birkan is inviting us, yes, I think truly it's going to be a quite short path. But it requires a lot of work in terms of being honest. Not a hard thing, apparently, but apparently it's a very hard thing as well at the same time.
Suhail, I'll give you the last word and then end it.
All right, I'll keep my comments less than a minute. So I'll just say this. That explanation of reason, from the way you're explaining it, I don't disagree with you because that's giving reason an impersonal perspective. To me, reason, and Khatija Beyza didn't say anything about this, but she gave a presentation at one of the retreats when we talked about reason, is using your experience, or as the Quran says, reasoning with your heart. To me, it doesn't become impersonal when you reason with how you experience the world. Not reasoning as in some sort of like intellectual thought process out there, sort of removed from the self. If you do that, I don't disagree with you. That doesn't mean anything to me. But it means something to me when I use my own personal experiences. You don't have to reason your impoverishment, because impoverishment is not something you reason. It's an obvious fact, but it's how you make sense of it, and that's what you need reason for, and how you actually communicate with, how you eventually connect and communicate from the one who not only made you impoverished, but who provides, and from whom you feel satisfied for his providing. So that's how I see it, personally. When you make reason impersonal, when you sort of make it devoid of sort of empirical reality of your experience, then I agree with you. But Quran doesn't put it that way. It doesn't pit reason that way. It says reasoning with the heart. That's how I see it, and sort of how you make things personal.
Thank you, everyone. I think today's discussion was very fruitful and helpful. I think we can all try to be more honest with ourselves and see our reality. And then I'll end it, I guess. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين.